It's witch season! Hi, I'm Colleen Delaney. Welcome back to my channel. Here I talk about books and writing, and if you have been hanging out here for a while, you know I love witchy books and witches and just witchy stuff in general. So, this is really like the heyday of the year for me here. I've got my nice witchy garland I hang. A wicked witch lives here with her little monsters and one hot devil, or one handsome devil. And spell book. Ooh, don't knock over. I love witchy stuff. I love witchy books. Let's talk about witchy books. Before we start, in the description, as always, are links to my newsletter and some of my books. I'm going to start by telling you about my witchy book, The Forest Witch. And the best part is, if you sign up for my newsletter, you can get a copy of it for free. It's a quick novella that takes place in the Pacific Northwest during a rainy weekend in autumn. It's super cozy about a witch and a warlock who are soulmates, but just sort of like can't figure it out yet. And it's super sweet, very low conflict, and you can read it in about an hour and a half, depending on how quickly you read. Grab a copy or sign up for a newsletter and get one for free. Because I tend to do a Witchy Reads video every year, this year I tried to put all new books on the list. So my past videos, I have a lot of great ones too. I'll try to remember to put links in the description for you for those videos. But these are going to be mostly books I read in the last year. There's one book on this list that I can't remember if I put it in last year's video because I read it in October and I don't remember exactly when I filmed that witchy video, but I don't think I put it in, but we'll see. We're going to start with the two books I read most recently, and they were both in my September wrap-up, so I'm not going to go into too much detail with them, but the first is Small Town Big Magic by Hazel Beck. This is about a woman named Emerson who lives in a small town, and she basically has always thought there was nothing weird about her town, and then a big something happens, and she realizes that everyone in her town basically is magical except her. I didn't love this book, but it does have very good witchy vibes. If you're looking for more of like a contemporary fantasy than like a romantic fantasy, then I would say this is probably the book for you. I do think this would make a really good miniseries if that's happening. It might be. I have no idea. It sold pretty well. Next, I have Coven by Jennifer Dugan, and the illustrations are by Kit Seaton. And this is a YA graphic novel about a girl named Emerson, who has been living in California after moving from upstate New York. She is a witch. Her family's witches. And then people from her coven in upstate New York get murdered, and her parents decide to move back. She doesn't want to leave California. She's a girlfriend in California. She has a lot of friends. She doesn't want to leave, but she goes back, and then when there, realizes how little she knows about controlling her powers and how it'll be important for her to learn how to do that. The pictures in this are amazing and extremely fall vibes. Like such beautiful fall vibes. It's a great October read due to that. I mean, technically I read it in September, but the fall vibes are here. The plotline is fun. It's also a one-off, which I really like, so you don't have to like commit to a huge series while reading this. You can just read this one and then be done. It does get a little scary at the end, real quick, but it was very fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm not putting the practical magic books on here because they've been in previous ones, but I did want to talk about Blackbird House by Alice Hoffman, which isn't technically witchy, but in very much Alice Hoffman's vein, it is about women who are somewhat magical. This book follows a piece of land in Massachusetts for 200 years, and a lot of magical realism type stuff happens, and a lot of the women who live there have like weird things happen to them. So it felt very witchy in a magical realism sense. Also, if you're someone who just loves Alice Hoffman, like I do, this is a great one. It's a very quick read. It's only 225 pages, and I read this in one day. Each chapter is a different family living in the house, so it also reads very quickly because of that. It is wonderful. Next, I've got The Xhex by Erin Sterling. This is about Vivian, who lives in this small town in Georgia, and I'm like totally blanking on the name, which was an important part of it. Graves Glen. We start in the past, and she has just been broken up with by her warlock boyfriend. She's a witch. And I think he's a witch too. That's like a weird thing in the book that was pretty funny, how using the term warlock is considered antiquated. He breaks up with her after like they've had this whirlwind summer fling because he's like betrothed old school to like a woman he doesn't know. And he goes home to Wales, and she gets really drunk with her cousin and decides to curse him. And she doesn't think it's like a real curse because she's like joking around using a Bath and Body Works candle, but like some crazy stuff happens when she makes the curse and wonders whether or not it actually happened. We fast forward 10-ish years, and Reese, her ex, comes back to Graves Glen because he needs to charge to the ley lines. It's like where the magic is. And as soon as he crosses into the town, everything starts going crazy because the curse that she set on him kind of transfers to the ley lines. This was really fun. Like, it's a super fun. It wasn't my favorite witchy book I ever read, but I had a really good time reading it. If Netflix made this into a movie, I'd watch the heck out of it. Okay, I have to throw in like a highbrow lit fic for you now about witches. And that is Witches by Brenda Lozano. This is got two narrators. One of our narrators is Zoe, who I loved. She's a journalist from Mexico City, and she's interviewing this woman. We hear all about Zoe's life. It's not really magical. It's like a normal life, but I enjoyed her life very much. She's interviewing Feliciana, who is mostly talking about Paloma, who's her cousin who was recently murdered. Paloma and Feliciana are both like shaman type characters in their community in rural Mexico. So you get some like magical realism feeling vibes. It's not straight fantasy, but you get some magical realism feeling vibes. You get a lot of like folk witchcraft, people coming to see these women and getting them to help them with, you know, heartache or actual ailments, stuff like that. If you want like a lit ficky witchy book, this is the one for you. Okay, so this is so funny. I was literally just thinking that Small Town Big Magic is Emerson, is the main character. Coven is MZ, and then Spells for Forgetting is Emery. So we got a lot of M names going on. I'm like just checking my last book. I don't think there was an M name in it. No, there's not. But okay. So Spells for Forgetting takes place on an island off the coast of Washington. And it was a wonderful setting. The island is called Sersha, and everyone in the town is kind of magical. The island is a big tourist destination like September and October for Apple reasons. And then the rest of the year, pretty much no one comes there unless they live there. There's a ton of narrators in this book, and some narrators only get like one chapter. But our main narrators are Emery and August. And they were deeply in love when they were teenagers. And then a big event happened. And August left Emery there. And they had always they'd always talked about leaving together, getting off Sersha together. And he basically abandoned her. We jump a lot in time. But the book starts with August having to come home to spread his mother's ashes in Sersha. And it's the first time he's seen Emery since he abandoned her. And it's been like 15-ish years. So they're much older. They went from like 17 to they're in their 30s now. And the mystery of the past unravels. And like the magic of the island unravels. I really like this. It's super atmospheric. And I do love the Pacific Northwest as a witchy setting. As you can see, my book, The Forest Witch, takes place in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's got great witchy vibes. This was definitely a really fun one. And I'm pretty sure it's in paperback now. I think I saw it at Target on paperback. Next, I have Wayward by Amelia Hart. This book was very cool. Content warning for this book. There is on-page domestic assault and on-page sexual assault in this book, so just be forewarned. This has 3 different narrators in 3 very different timelines. So the first is Kate, and she's in present day. And we start with her escaping London out of a physically abusive relationship. She has been willed this cottage by her great aunt, who she hasn't seen since she was like 12 years old. But she kept it a secret from her partner. So she thinks it'll be a safe place for her to go to and like get away and be able to hide. So that's Kate's plotline. Then we jump back to 1619 with Alpha, who is awaiting a witch trial, which was intense. I really liked her plotline. And then our third narrator is Violet, and it's World War II, and Violet's a young-ish teen, like a mid-teens, and she is Kate's great aunt, and there's something off about her, but no one will really tell her what it is. The women in this line, because you find out they're all related. Alpha's like whatever great-great-great-grandmother, however many greats it is, all have this weird sort of ability to call to birds and bugs, which made this like the most perfect cover you've ever seen. The best part about this book is that none of the plot lines were weak. So sometimes when I read a multiple timeline with multiple narrators, I'll be like, ugh, I don't want to read this narrator. I want to jump ahead to to a different narrator. All three of these were so strong that like you'd finish part of Kate's story and you'd want to read more of Kate's story, but then it'd be Altha's story and you're like, oh, actually, but remember where we left Altha? And then the same thing would happen. You'd be like, oh, remember what Violet was going on? Amelia Hart did a really good job at making sure that all three plot lines were just so strong and so good. So lastly, I wanted to show you a witchy book that I have on my TBR, and that is The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Bree Ann Randall. I just got this as an add-on from Book of the Month this month, and it's been like all over Instagram. I mean, I'm not on TikTok as much, but like all over. She did an amazing job marketing. She should run a class on it. But I'm going to read you the blurb because I don't really know that much about it yet. Sadie Revelare has always believed that the curse of 4 heartbreaks that accompanies her magic would be worth the price. But when her grandmother is diagnosed with cancer with only weeks to live in her first heartbreak, Jake McNeely returns to town after a decade, her carefully structured life begins to unravel. With the news of their grandmother's impending death, Sadie's estranged twin brother Seth returns to town, bringing with him deeply buried family secrets that threaten to tear Sadie's world apart. Their grandmother has been the backbone of the family for generations, and with her death, Sadie is ensure she'll have the strength to keep the family and her magic together. As feelings for Jake begin to rekindle, and with her grandmother growing sicker by the day, Sadie faces the last of her heartbreaks, and she has to decide, is love more important than magic? So I'm guessing that her magic is kind of like a trade for being in love. And as someone who both loves witchy stories and heartbreaking stories, I think I'll really like this. So this is classified as a fantasy also, not as a romance. So I'm assuming that there's obviously going to be a romantic plotline, but the fantasy is going to be in the forefront. I am planning to read this in the next week. So you'll get a review of it in my October wrap-up. And that is my quick witchy reads recommendation. I mean, there's so many witchy books I love I didn't put in here. The Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross are my most favorites, but I was pulling them down to add them to this list, and I was like, I've talked about these, I think, for the last 2 years, pretty much as soon as I started my BookTube channel. So I feel like you don't need to hear about them again, but they're great. I mean, you gotta love the practical magic books. If you love witchy YA and you've never read Monica Furlong's books, Wise Child and Juniper, you should read them. They're from the 90s. They're fantastic. They are what turned me on to witchy books. Like, they were the books that I was like, yes, I want to read these. If you like historical witches, Kerrigan Byrne's Highland Magic series has some great historical witches in it. These are all books I've talked about before, so we'll leave it at that. If you're still here, thank you for hanging out. And if you feel like it, in the comments, tell me what your favorite witchy read is. If you don't feel like typing words, throw me a witch emoji, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. See you soon!